Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oops. Yeah, I was trying to get... Hello. This does not bode well for the program. Hello. Trying to get my voice. It's, I almost said August. It ain't. It's September, and it feels like September. September 2nd, after all of that rain, gorgeous, sunny day. I hope we've learned to enjoy them when we get them. Am I wrong, or were there more deaths attributed to this storm in New York City than in Louisiana? Is that possible? Wow. The extent of flooding, in the eastern part of the country is just extraordinary. And in those big cities that sit on lots of water, like New York, Philly, there is extraordinary flooding. How do you have a subway system when you're sitting on an island that itself is being swallowed up by water? I don't know how you have a subway system. You better think about elevated systems, if anything. I don't know. Well, the paper today and the news today is another litany of horrors, and I just hate that's what I'm left to speak about, because for one thing, it's a beautiful day. And nature is showing us its kinder face. And it's the last show of this week. And I won't have a show on Monday because it's Labor Day. And I won't have a show on Tuesday because it's Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. I've never worked on that holiday. So next time I talk to you, who knows? I wonder if he'll still be here. It'll be Wednesday of next week. It's pretty much a week away. Exactly. So I am left, unfortunately, though, to deal with what we've been dealt in terms of the news. And it's unsettling, frightening, harrowing, maddening. The story that is uppermost, I guess, in my head today is what has happened in Texas. What has happened in Texas? Well, just in the last, I believe, 48 hours, the state of Texas has passed laws that allow for permitless open carrying of firearms in the state. In other words, you don't have to have a permit, and you can walk around with lethal weapons. That's not the one you thought I was going to say. They've passed that voting suppression bills. I mean, and those bills, if you look at them, it's just stunning how blatantly apparent it is that the sole purpose of those laws is not, of course, to get a handle on fraud in our elections. It's so very clear. It's to deny people of color their vote. All of the ways that people of color vote have been taken away. Black people overwhelmingly in Texas use 24-hour voting. They use voting in which other people come to that. Everything, drive through, all of it. It's gone now. We have, at least the state of Texas has entered a new Jim Crow era, just flat out obvious Jim Crow. And then, of course, there's their clever abortion bill, which is now in effect. And so the 8 million women of childbearing age in Texas, 8 million women, have essentially no access whatsoever to abortion, even though the law of the land of the country in which Texas sits is very clear that abortion is legal in this country. So how is it possible that a blatantly unconstitutional law could go into effect? The Supreme Court was asked, stop this, block this law. It's unconstitutional on its face. They have blocked other such laws before they went into effect. And this Supreme Court did not. 5-4, John Roberts, the Chief Justice, siding with the 3 beleaguered liberal members of the court. But they were overwhelmed by the superior forces of the far right justices on the court, who have clearly now indicated that they will destroy Roe v. Wade. I think I called it a clever law because the reason the court, these five Republican appointed justices on the court, gave for allowing it to take effect is they fell for what the clever gambit was of those who drafted this law. And that was that there was really, as these 5 said, there was really no one to sue here. The state of Texas does not enforce this law. We have to wait until a citizen brings a case, and then maybe we'll revisit this. So I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming you have followed this enough to understand that this is how this law differs from some of the others intending to destroy a woman's right to control her own health. The Texas law specifically deputizes anybody, any citizen. I'm not even sure you have to be in Texas. I don't know. It deputizes everybody to sue anybody who that self-appointed deputy now thinks might have helped in any way somebody to secure an abortion. There's even bounties being paid, $10,000. I mean, it is the most extraordinarily cynical, outrageous, brilliant in its evil. And the court let it go. And let's be clear. Rich women in Texas, people with means, this law doesn't apply to them. People and women of means always had access to abortion, legal or not, safe abortion, legal or not. It is women who do not have the means who will die because of this. I have a caller. Well, might as well interrupt me now because I can feel a rant coming on. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Lynn.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this or not, but what I heard is Biden right now, laws on the books, he could send federal marshals into Texas and enforce the law and let those people, if they want to get abortions, it's a federal law. So DOJ could send federal marshals in there and enforce the law. So it's not over, but I don't know if they'll do it. If I was the president, I would. I'd get the son of the bitches right there because this is bullshit. They're their own little country over there. You know what I mean?
That's right. Well, it won't. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It is really unbelievable, or not, in fact. I thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
It's always nice to give me a little pause to collect myself. So essentially, these 5 ultra-right members on the court said to all the other Republican-controlled legislatures, including Pennsylvania's in the country, they told them, "Hey guys, you see, we're telling you, if you build one of these clever little Rube Goldberg-like laws for the make it so it seemingly on its face looks like we can't really intercede at the moment, it'll work." That's what they essentially did. That'll work. We're falling for this. And here's the other thing. Imagine, let's take a blue state, and let's say the Democratic-controlled legislature signed a law, passed a measure that would allow the deputization of private citizens to sue anyone who owned a firearm. It's the same thing. Americans have a right to own a firearm. Americans have a right to access abortion. Imagine if, and it would never happen, of course, because Democrats don't play the game with the fervor and the cynicism of Republicans. But it's the same kind of thing. And would the court have displayed this kind of procedural restraint if a law like that came before them, a clearly unconstitutional law? I think not. Carly Pierce, who writes for Esquire, who I just adore, said this about all of this. My astonished rage cleared for just a second when I realized that according to this decision, states can pass all kinds of unconstitutional laws as long as they leave the enforcement of those laws to bounty hunters. That's what Texas pulled off. And that's what this god-awful Supreme Court said, I guess so. You made an end run around us. Yeah. So the great state of Texas, just yesterday, had laws go into effect, unconstitutional laws go into effect that absolutely ban abortions, essentially. And as I said, that allow open carry, permitless carrying of lethal weaponry with no license, who cares? Probably, as far as I know, there's not even an age limit. 6-year-olds maybe can. They also have laws that went into effect yesterday that ban the teaching of racism. Well, they call it banning critical race theory. They also had a law that banned vaccine passports, and that, of course, because they aim to do the kinds of things that make life for their citizens better. They mandated that the Star-Spangled fucking Banner be played before every single sports game. I'm glad they got their eyes on the important stuff. And people keep moving to Texas. I mentioned that yesterday. I was with somebody last week who moved to Texas, and I said, what in the name of God? I'd like to see people moving out. I'd like to see companies moving out. Robert Reich, who was the labor secretary a million years ago, he said the thing about this court that sets it apart is its cruelty. He pointed out that last week, this Supreme Court shot down the moratorium on evictions. In the middle of a killer pandemic, they said, of course you can throw poor people into the streets. Let's increase the homeless population. Actually, if they're on the streets, apparently they'll be safer because it's indoors that the virus spreads more readily. So I don't know how he could call that cruel. And this same court said that people desperate people seeking asylum at our southern border could not in any way, for any reason, stay in a camp in the United States. They had to be pushed back into Mexico. I'm sure the Mexicans appreciated that too. And Reich says, you look at all of these. There is no empathy on this court. These are not people who will ever be seeking asylum. These are not people who ever will fear eviction. These are not people who will ever fear that they can't access abortion. He says what links all of these decisions is cruelty. A level of cruelty toward powerless people. And he goes on to give a history lesson of how even courts that had a majority of Republican, like there was a court, the Burger Court, for instance, that would never have found like this court does, because they understood that the role of the justice, the third branch of government, the justice branch, was to balance the scales in favor of the powerless, because the powerless usually don't fare too well with the other two branches. And he points out that a majority of this court, was appointed by presidents who lost the popular vote, who, if we had a true democracy, would never have been the president of the United States. And thus, these SOBs would never have been seated on this court. This court, the majority, was appointed by presidents who lost the popular vote. Three of them, God help us, of them, were appointed by a president who not only lost the popular vote, but who instigated a coup against the United States of America. So, you know, and again, I talk about it's just the sickening cynicism behind these laws. Okay, so this law bans abortions after 6 weeks. It is a rare woman who knows she's pregnant. It could be a missed period for any reason. Women who don't have, by the book, every 28 days I get my period. No. A woman wouldn't have a clue. And this is one of those fetal heartbeat. As soon as you can hear that heartbeat, that's why they came on 6 weeks. You can hear a heartbeat. Guess what? You cannot hear a heartbeat at 6 weeks. Why? Because at 6 weeks, that mass of dividing cells doesn't have a heart. It doesn't have anything even resembling a heart. So how could it beat? The sound is a result of electrical activity. But there is no heart formed at 6 weeks. There are no valves. And also, that sound of electrical impulses also does not indicate that, in fact, this is a viable pregnancy. And here's the other thing, and I'm sorry, I don't remember where I read it, but polls of Texans will tell you that the majority of Texans favor access to abortion. A majority of Texans actually were opposed to this gun. Anybody who wants can have a gun. You can carry it anywhere you want. You can wave it around if you want. They're opposed to that too. So you have this Republican-controlled, totally controlled legislature in Texas that doesn't give two hoots what their constituents want. They march to the beat of another drummer. But that fact that the majority of Texans don't want this suggests that the majority of Texans are not voting. They need to vote these people out. But you see, those people, knowing that, just made it a lot harder for the very people who would show up to vote them out. Made it much harder for them to vote. So you would think that if they don't allow Texas, okay, so they don't allow abortions. So surely they must then have really good sex education in their schools, so kids don't get pregnant. Because you don't want kids having kids all over the place. So, I mean, obviously these brilliant legislators in the Lone Star State would ensure and mandate really good sex education in their school, but you, of course, know where I'm going with this. Texas mandates an abstinence-only curriculum. The most popular sex education textbook there has a list titled 8 Steps to Protect Yourself from Sexually Transmitted Diseases. And not a one of them says, use a condom. Not a one. That's not one of the 8 steps. No, there are things like keep your knees together, pray. And I swear, one of them is actually get plenty of rest. I kid you not. Get plenty of rest. Texas, of course, has also a population, one of the highest rates of those who have no health insurance. Yeah, I can see why you'd want to live in that state. I can see that. God almighty. Well, yeah, Barbara sent me something that, Ari Berman said, and it's what I said. This is not a democracy we're living in. Nowhere near it. He said a Supreme Court where 5 of 6 conservative justices were appointed by Republican presidents who lost the popular vote and confirmed by senators representing a substantial minority of Americans are now happily taking away people's voting rights, reproductive rights. This is not a functional democracy. And something of a similar by Dana Milbank in today's Washington Post. The lead sentence being Texas this week showed us what a post-democracy America will look like. If a Trumpified Republican Party takes control, because they control a majority of the states of this disunion, we will see this repeated in state after state after state, including this one, by the way, because this legislature in Pennsylvania will adopt a similar law before you can blink. And the only thing that would keep that from moving forward is the veto of a Democratic governor. So this Republican Party wants a party where women are forced to have babies, even if they've been raped, even if they've been raped by their brother or their father. Incest, rape, no excuse. It's quite clear, looking at Texas, this is in America, where anybody can carry guns without a license, without a permit, without any safety training, without fingerprinting, anywhere they damn well please. And it's also in America where law-abiding people of color are disproportionately denied the right to vote. This is what I was attempting to say before regarding the right to vote. The final version of their just noxious, un-American voting bill bans drive-through and 24-hour voting, both of which are used disproportionately by people of color. It limits voting by mail. It blocks, get this, election officials from distributing applications for a mail ballot. They have to be specifically asked for one by a voter. This law places new rules and paperwork requirements that absolutely make it much, much harder for people to help other people vote, which is done often for the disabled, for the elderly, for people who do not have mobility or access, easy access to a polling place. They've made it almost impossible for those people to register, let alone vote. And here's where the poll data, he's got the poll data. 50% of Texas voters opposed this law, according to a poll taken in June by the University of Texas, the Texas Tribune. Two to one, Texans want stricter gun laws. 2 to 1. They oppose the banning of abortion. They oppose the ban on drive-through voting. They oppose restrictions on early voting. And the legislature said, tough. And so this is what Dana Milbank says. Texas legislators are not answering to the people, obviously, but rather to the white male voters that put them and keep them in power. The new voting, these onerous voting restrictions, by repressing non-white votes, aims to keep those white voters dominant. And as the demographics of the state turn more and more against Republicans, these anti-democratic actions will only get more so. We got to keep our eye on these people. This is a legislature that, as I said, banned the fictional menace of critical race theory. I'm quoting Milbank here. Put in new restrictions on demonstrations, banned homeless encampments, banned mask mandates, banned vaccine mandates, even while the pandemic rages in the state. This is the same legislature that failed to expand Medicaid eligibility because that helps the people they don't want alive, let alone voting. They refused billions of federal health care dollars, even though, as I said before, they have the most uninsured people in the nation. That's the state with the most uninsured people in the nation. Oh, but they did pass something, as I said. You have to play the Star Spangled Banner, and now you can buy beer and wine before noon on Sundays. So yeah, I'm gonna give the devil their due. And Milbank ends thusly: "This is the present in Texas, and the future for all of us. Unless we mobilize to arrest the Republicans' destruction of our democracy." Yeah. Just saying. And speaking of destruction of democracy, did you see what McCarthy, the House, and if we don't arrest this Republican advance, and they reclaim in less than let's see, a year and a half, less than a year and a half, if the Republicans take control of the House of Representatives, this will be the Speaker of the House, right, McCarthy? And McCarthy, I mean, I was just blown away. Kevin McCarthy said that any telecommunications company that complies with the requests from the commission looking into the January 6th attempted coup, they've been requested to hold records they have of certain entities and people who are people of some interest in the investigation, which is what a committee doing its job would do. And he openly threatened these companies that if they comply with the legal request of a House Select Committee, a House he could well be the leader of, hey, people who understand our democracy call his statements stunning. He openly threatened them. He said, "We will remember, and when we're in power again, we will come for you." One person said it's a kind of shakedown tactic that would be more expected, in an autocracy, like like Vladimir Putin's Russia. Well, yeah, because that is the model that these guys are going with. Think about Texas, deputizing people to turn in their neighbors, to rat on somebody they might have a vendetta against. You do me wrong, I'm turning you in because I happen to know you tried to get an abortion. So you turn citizens on other citizens. You create a climate of fear. This is what I remember reading life in East Germany was like. This is what life in dictatorships is like. And here are those very same tactics being codified into law by state legislatures controlled by Republicans in this country. And here's another thought. If it weren't for the events of the last year, January 6th, for one, this kind of a threat coming from a Republican might be shocking, but not taken seriously. But of course, the idea that a president would inspire an effective coup attempt to try to stay in power after losing an election was unheard of too. So in the 7 months since that vile being left the White House, his brand of authoritarianism has not waned. If anything, it is getting stronger in the Republican Party that lives in fear of him and his base. I warned you, didn't I? Heading into the show, I did. I said something about it being a nice sunny day, and I was, and this is also dark. I don't know. I wanted to share this with you yesterday. I didn't get around to it. Did you see that in Georgia, a state that is at the bottom of people being vaccinated, the state government there is trying. They are sending vans out. They are setting up mobile vaccine clinics in far off places that maybe it would be more difficult for people to give. They are trying. And you know what's happening? Those mobile vaccination events are being shut down by protesters who harass not only the people, the public health workers trying to get vaccines to people, but obviously harass, intimidate, and scare the hell out of any citizen who might want to make use of the opportunity to get a vaccine. And so what's been happening is that they set up to do a clinic, and man, those protesters, because they have to advertise it, if you want a vaccine, we'll be here. Well, it's the protesters who show up first. And they harass, well, you know what they do. We've seen them. They surround these poor people. They intimidate. They terrorize. This is America, guys. This is America. September 2021. You know, I was thinking, you know, because of the weather stuff too, I was thinking I never thought I would live in an America that looks like that. The only other that looks like this. I mean, climate-wise and government-wise, all of it. It's dystopian to me. Frightening. I'm sorry, I'm pausing because I'm looking at a little chipmunk eating the moss in between my bricks. Stop it. He ran away. I think he heard me. I'm reminded of the time, and the year was 1968, when I was a student at Northwestern University, just north of Chicago, and I took the elevated train, from Evanston down to where my great aunt lived. And I got off the L, and it was in the summer, and I walked toward her building, and I crossed the Michigan Avenue, which is a big commercial street. And there on the corner at the Walgreens, big Walgreens, I love that drugstore. There at the corner were National Guard troops and this huge tank that had barbed wire on the front of it. When I saw it sitting there on the corner in front of the Walgreens, my blood ran cold. It did. I understood, you know, that where that idiom comes from. My blood ran cold. I felt a chill. And again, I thought of the Soviet Union. I thought of pictures. I've seen pictures like this of an army and tanks in a person's own country. The army was the person's army. I mean, they're a tank and soldiers that appeared to be ready to fight the citizenry of their own country. I never thought I'd see it in the United States of America. 1968. Okay, now, hang on. I want to share this with you because I found it really interesting. Again, it's David Leonhardt, who I'm always suggesting you read. But he points out, I think he's been very good on the pandemic, and he points out that there's just so much we don't know, that this virus is mysterious in the way it acts. And if you talk to the more humble of the experts, the virologists and the epidemiologists, they will say, you know, we really don't know why this virus, you know, all of a sudden surges, and then seemingly about 2 months later seems to ebb. And his piece was about this 2-month cycle that experts can't explain, and that appears to be happening again with this latest surge. The spike and then down. And I'm thinking, if that is something that this virus does, that's the kind of thing that DeSantis, governor of Florida, is counting on. That and a short attention span of American voters. That the horrific pictures and the dying and death and the overloaded ICUs and the children sick, that all of that will eventually by itself wane. But in country after country, it has seemingly been thus. Remember India? Just that extraordinary surge. And then it was about 2.5 months, it began plummeting. Britain saw the same thing. Indonesia, Thailand, France. In a lot of countries, the Delta surge lasts somewhere between a month and a half to 2.5 months. It doesn't go away, but then it plateaus and starts coming down. And we don't know why. And I don't know. And I also don't even want to begin talking about the fact that I'm seeing stuff about new variants left, right, and center. I'm going to have to learn the Greek alphabet. I saw something today that the World Health Organization is putting out some kind of concerned alert about another variant, the mu. There's a mu letter, right? Is that how it's pronounced? Omega, theta, delta, alpha, beta. Those I know. Mu. It just said mu. My God, it's like, the hurricane names. We could run out of alphabet before all these fools get vaccinated. There was a piece also in the Washington Post, I think written by a doctor, who asked the provocative question, do the unvaccinated deserve scarce ICU beds? And, now that I am reading about people with, let's say, brain cancer, colon cancer, where timely intervention, surgical intervention, is absolutely required. I'm hearing case after case where those surgeries are not happening because there are no ICU beds. They are taken up by these frigging fools who refuse to get vaccinated. And people are dying as a result. Stroke victims, heart attack victims, they go to the ER and they're turned away. Imagine if that happened to you or someone you loved. This is the United States of America, and imagine that bed that your mother might need is taken up by some Trumpist jerk who refused to get vaccinated. There's something called triage, is there not? And those can be subjective decisions. I mean, even a right-wing governor of a red state like Kay Ivey, right? I can't remember which state she represents. Is that Georgia? She famously said it's time to start blaming the unvaccinated. So some jerk radio host who gets the virus, somebody who spent hours dissuading, discouraging his listeners from getting vaccinated, spreading lies about the efficacy of the vaccine, the efficacy of masking, of social distancing. That guy gets it and ends up taking an ICU bed. ICU beds, we have learned, are a finite resource. The head of Health and Human Services in New Mexico said, we are going to have to choose who gets care and who doesn't get care if this gets any worse, and we do not want to get to that point. Well, I don't know. The woman writing this piece ends up where you think she'll end up, which is, we can't do that. Keep working to persuade your unvaccinated cousin to step up, but praise the caregiver who might one day save that cousin's life, even if he doesn't step up. I don't know. I think increasingly of the undeserving unvaccinated. Okay, we're almost done, so I just want to, this is the rest of the story piece. Remember we talked about Dorothy Parker, that wondrous Algonquin Roundtable wit and author who since she died has not found much rest. Her ashes bounced around the East Coast for some time. She died in 1967. She was, I think she was in somebody's file cabinet for a long time. And then she ended up at the NAACP headquarters in Baltimore. And anyway, she's finally, it's over. It's done. Last year, when the NCAA moved itself, they gave Dorothy's cremains to the guy who heads the Dorothy Parker Society, a big fan. His name is Kevin Fitzpatrick. So he came, he had her urn, and he had her interred with her family in Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. And that was last year. And the final chapter is that I think earlier this week or maybe last Sunday was the unveiling of her headstone. In Jewish, she was Jewish. In Jewish, I don't know if it's not law, practice, the headstone is not put on till a year after, and then there is a unveiling of it. And it turns out her name was Dorothy Rothschild. So she's buried in the Rothschild plot. And they had a unveiling, and they had a party, all her fans, and they all seemed to have flasks they were drinking. She did like to drink. And the epitaph they chose is one she had written, but it's not a very good one. And I want to protest that, but, I wasn't asked. Her name and date, and then the final stanza of a poem she wrote in 1925 called Epitaph for a Darling Lady. That's what's on the tombstone. It is this. And of all the things she's written, it leaves me... Leave for her a red young rose. Go your way and save your pity. She is happy, for she knows that her dust is very pretty. I don't know. I mean, she wrote a lot of stuff about death that I think... Isn't she the one, Excuse My Dust? That would have been better. Or if you can read this, you've come too close. Or I'm here against my better judgment. That sounds more like her voice. Oh, Barbara, thank you for just making me remember this. Barbara writes, where is a place where men are controlling women's bodies, everyone is walking around armed, and religion and politics are indistinguishable from each other? You have three choices: A, Texas, B, Afghanistan, or C, both. And the correct answer is, of course, both. A place where men are controlling women's bodies, everyone's walking around armed, and religion and politics are indistinguishable. Afghanistan, Texas. Take your pick. And I'll leave you with this thought that I'm sure you've all had too. It is so unbelievably mind-boggling to know that the very people who have been screaming, you can't take my freedom from me, because someone's asking them to wear a mask to protect others during a pandemic, are the same people quite willing to take the freedom of a woman's control over her own body away with nary a second of doubt. It's astonishing. Those people who say, I have the right to choose what I do, when their choices endanger others. But they don't think a woman has a choice to decide what she can do with her own body. Good God. All right, listen, I'm going to go out. I'm going to try to enjoy this glorious day. This is my kind of weather. It's a glorious day. And again, a reminder, next week, got a shortened week. No show on Labor Day, no show the next day, which is the Jewish New Year. But so I'll see you again next Wednesday, okay? I'll look forward to it. I really will. In the interim, keep your head down or not, and stay safe.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.